There comes a moment in every life when the strength runs out, when the prayers feel heavy, the nights feel long, and the tears fall without permission. You did everything you knew how to do, and it still wasn't enough. That moment is not failure. That moment is not weakness. That moment is not the end. That moment is the signal, because God has never required you to be strong forever. He only asked you to be faithful until He steps in. When your hands are shaken, heaven is steady. When your voice is silent, God is still speaking. When your strength collapses, divine power is activated. You thought you were breaking, but what if you were making room? You thought you were losing, but what if God was positioning? You thought you were alone, but what if God was waiting for you to stop striving so He could start moving? There are battles you can't win with effort. There are doors you can't open with energy. There are mountains that only move when God shows up. And here's the truth. The enemy doesn't want you to hear. God specializes in stepping in when you're out of strength. He doesn't arrive late. He arrives right on time. He doesn't replace your effort. He responds to your surrender. And when you reach the end of yourself, you have finally arrived at the beginning of Him. If you're tired, worn, empty, or barely holding on, this message is not about quitting. It's about divine intervention. There are moments in life when weakness feels like a verdict. When your energy is gone, your confidence is shaken, and your faith feels stretched thin. The world tells you that you are disqualified, that strong people win, resilient people survive, and only the powerful prevail. But heaven tells a very different story. Heaven says your weakness is not a sentence, it is a summons. It is not proof that God has stepped away from you. It is evidence that God is drawing nearer than ever before. We have been taught to hide our weakness, to mask our tears, to push through pain with a smile and call it strength. But God has never been impressed by performance. He is moved by honesty. When you finally admit, I can't do this anymore, you have not failed. You have told the truth. And truth is the doorway through which God enters. Weakness exposes the limits of human ability, but it also reveals the vastness of divine power. As long as you can handle it yourself, you will try to. As long as you think one more push, one more connection, one more strategy will save you, you will keep striving. But there comes a sacred breaking point where effort gives way to surrender and striving gives way to trust. That breaking point is not the end of your story, it is the turning point. God is not looking for people who never get tired. He is looking for people who know where to turn when they are. Your exhaustion does not offend Him. Your tears do not embarrass Him. Your confession of weakness does not push Him away. It pulls Him closer. Because God has always done His greatest work in the spaces where human strength runs out. Think about it. Every major move of God begins where human capacity ends. Seas do not part until people are trapped. Giants do not fall until fear is real. Graves do not open until hope looks dead. God waits for the moment when you can no longer take credit, because only then can His glory be fully revealed. Your weakness removes the illusion of control. It strips away pride. It silences self-reliance. And in that quiet, holy space, God begins to speak. Not with condemnation, not with disappointment, but with power and compassion. He says, now I can show you who I am. We often pray for strength, but God often gives us surrender instead. Because strength can still tempt you to rely on yourself, but surrender forces you to rely on Him. Weakness becomes the altar where you lay down your plans, your timelines, your expectations, and say, Lord, if you don't do it, it won't be done. And that prayer moves heaven.dr. Do not despise the season where you feel empty. Emptiness is not absence, it is availability. When you are full of yourself, there is no room for God. But when life has drained you, God sees space He can fill. Your weakness becomes capacity. Capacity for grace, capacity for power, capacity for transformation. The enemy wants you to believe that your struggle disqualifies you. He whispers that if you were truly called, you wouldn't be tired. If you were truly chosen, you wouldn't be struggling. But that is a lie. The truth is, the struggle is often the evidence of calling. The pressure is often the proof of purpose. And the weakness is often the sign that God is about to do something you could never do on your own. God does not recruit the strong so they can impress him. He empowers the weak so they can testify about him. When your story includes weakness, God gets the glory. When your victory cannot be explained by talent, intelligence, or connections, heaven is revealed as the source. You are not less valuable because you are tired. You are not less anointed because you are struggling. You are not forgotten because you feel weak. In fact, you may be standing at the exact place where God has been waiting for you to arrive, waiting for you to stop pretending, waiting for you to stop carrying what was never meant to be carried alone, waiting for you to say, Lord, I need you. And when that prayer rises, strength begins to flow. Not always the kind that lifts immediately, but the kind that sustains. Not always the kind that removes the problem, but the kind that carries you through it. Divine strength does not always feel loud. Sometimes it feels like peace in chaos, endurance in pain, hope in darkness. But make no mistake, it is power. Your weakness teaches you something strength never could: dependence. And dependence is not a flaw in the kingdom of God. It is a requirement. God never wanted you to live independent of him. He designed you to need him daily, moment by moment. Weakness brings you back to that design. So do not run from your weakness. Do not hide it. Do not curse it. Bring it to God. Lay it at his feet. Say, this is all I have left. And watch how God takes what is left and proves it is enough when placed in his hands. Because your weakness is not disqualification. It is an invitation. An invitation for God to step in, stand up, and show himself strong on your behalf. There comes a point where effort reaches its limit. You've planned, pushed, prayed, tried again, and still the situation refuses to move. That's when frustration creeps in. Because we are conditioned to believe that if we just do more, push harder, or try longer, something has to change. But some moments are designed to teach you a holy truth. There are places human effort was never meant to go. God steps in where human effort ends. Not because effort is wrong, but because effort has a boundary. You can only lift so much, endure so long, and fix so little. And when you finally reach the edge of what you can do, that edge becomes the entrance point for what God can do. We struggle with this because we like control. Effort gives us the illusion that we are in charge. As long as we are doing something, we feel useful, powerful, and safe. But God does not compete with your control. He waits for you to release it. Not to shame you, not to humble you harshly, but to free you from carrying a weight you were never created to hold alone. There are problems effort cannot solve. You cannot effort your way into peace. You cannot force healing into broken hearts. You cannot grind your way into open doors that heaven has closed. And trying harder in those moments doesn't produce progress. It produces exhaustion. God allows you to reach that exhaustion so you will finally stop asking, what else can I do? And start asking, God, what are you doing? Human effort ends when wisdom runs out, when strength runs out, when answers run out. And that is not a crisis, that is a crossroads. Because God never intended to be your last option. He was always meant to be your source. But as long as you still believe effort alone will save you, you will keep God in the background instead of the center. Look at how God works throughout life. He waits until resources are depleted. He waits until plans collapse. He waits until help disappears. Not because he enjoys delay, but because he values dependence. When human effort ends, pride ends, performance ends, pretending ends. And what's left is honesty. And honesty is fertile ground for miracles. We often ask God to bless our effort, but God is inviting us to surrender it. Because some things don't need more effort. They need divine intervention. You can water a seed endlessly, but only God can make it grow. You can knock on doors all day, but only God can unlock the right one. You can prepare, but only God can position. There is relief hidden in this truth. You are not failing because effort stopped working. You are transitioning. You are moving from striving to trusting, from pushing to positioning, from human ability to divine authority. God is not waiting for you to collapse. He is waiting for you to consent. Consent sounds simple, but it is costly. It means saying, God, I release how I thought this would happen. It means letting go of timelines, outcomes, and expectations you built with your own hands. It means admitting that effort has limits and God does not. When effort ends, fear often speaks first. Fear says, if you stop, everything will fall apart. But faith answers, if God steps in, everything will come together. That is the battle of the moment. Not between success and failure, but between control and trust. God steps in not to erase your effort, but to elevate it. He takes what you've done and breathes on it. He adds favor where effort could only add fatigue. He adds clarity where effort only added confusion. He adds acceleration where effort only produced delay. When God steps in, progress no longer depends on your energy. It depends on His authority. This is why rest is powerful. Rest is not laziness, it is confidence. It says, I believe God is working even when I am not. That kind of rest silences anxiety. It restores perspective. It realigns your heart with heaven's rhythm instead of the world's pressure. Human effort often asks, how? God's intervention answers, watch. When God steps in, doors open without force. Answers come without panic. Provision arrives without strain. And you realize that what you were killing yourself to accomplish was never meant to be accomplished that way. God does not step in to embarrass you. He steps in to reveal Himself, to show you that your life is not sustained by hustle, but by grace. That your future is not protected by your grind, but by His promises. That your calling is not dependent on your stamina, but on His faithfulness. When effort ends, clarity begins. You start to see what really matters. You stop wasting energy on things God never assigned to you. You learn the difference between responsibility and burden. Responsibility is yours, burden belongs to God. And many people are tired because they are carrying what they were only meant to release. God stepping in does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like peace where panic used to be. Sometimes it looks like strength to endure what you cannot change yet. Sometimes it looks like guidance instead of instant deliverance. But every time it looks like grace. So do not fear the moment when effort ends. Do not panic when your strength reaches its limit. That moment is sacred. That moment is the handoff. That moment is where heaven takes what earth can no longer carry. And when God steps in, you will look back and realize effort didn't fail. You just reached the place where effort was never enough. And that's where God has always done His best work. There are seasons when waiting feels like punishment. When you've prayed, believed, prepared, and stepped out in faith, yet nothing seems to be happening. The silence feels heavy. The delay feels personal. And if you're not careful, you start interpreting God's timing as rejection. But delay is not denial. It is divine timing at work in ways you cannot yet see. We live in a world addicted to speed. Fast answers, fast results, fast breakthroughs. We measure value by immediacy, but God measures value by readiness. What feels slow to you may be perfectly aligned in heaven. God is not responding to your urgency. He is responding to your destiny. And destiny requires timing. Delay does something important. It exposes what you really believe about God. When prayers are answered quickly, it's easy to praise. But when answers are postponed, faith is tested. Delay asks the question, do you trust God's heart even when you don't understand His hands? Do you believe He is good even when He is quiet? God's silence is not absence. It is often preparation. While you are waiting on God, God is working on you, around you, and ahead of you. He is arranging details you cannot reach, aligning people you haven't met, and closing doors you would have forced open too early. What feels like nothing happening is actually everything being positioned. We assume delay means something is wrong. But what if delay means something is being protected? There are blessings that would break you if they came too soon. There are doors that look good now but would derail your future if they open prematurely. God delays not to frustrate you but to safeguard what He promised. Think about it. Timing determines impact. The same word spoken too early can wound. The same opportunity taken too soon can destroy. The same success received without maturity can collapse you from the inside. God is not just interested in giving you something, He is committed to keeping you whole when it arrives. Delay also reveals motive. When the reward is postponed, the heart is purified. You discover whether you were chasing God or just the outcome, whether you wanted His will or just His provision. Delay separates shallow faith from surrendered trust. And that refining is painful but necessary. God never wastes waiting. Every season of delay carries instruction. It teaches patience in a world of pressure. It teaches humility in a culture of entitlement. It teaches dependence in a system built on self-reliance. Waiting reshapes your character so you can sustain what is coming. The enemy loves to exploit delay. He whispers that God forgot you, that your prayers bounced off the ceiling, that you missed your moment. But God's timing cannot be missed by those who trust Him. What is meant for you will arrive when you are ready for it, and not a second too late. Delay is often God's mercy in disguise. He sees dangers you don't. He knows outcomes you can't predict. He understands how one decision affects generations beyond you. So He slows things down, not to stop you, but to guide you, not to deny you, but to develop you. There is also power being built in the waiting. Endurance is forged there. Discernment is sharpened there. Faith is deepened there. You learn to hear God's voice without external confirmation. You learn to stand without applause. You learn to trust without proof. These lessons cannot be rushed. We often ask God to hurry, but God is asking us to mature. Speed does not equal success. Alignment does. When God moves, He moves with precision. He opens doors that no one can shut and shuts doors no one can open. And when it happens, you will realize the delay was setting the stage for a greater reveal. Delay teaches you to rest, to release anxiety, to stop striving. You learn that your life is not held together by your effort, but by God's faithfulness. That realization brings peace even before the promise arrives. And that peace is a gift in itself. When delay lingers, it's easy to compare yourself to others who seem to be moving faster. But comparison distorts purpose. Their timeline is not your timeline. Their calling is not your calling. God custom designs timing based on assignment. What works for one could destroy another. Divine timing also ensures that when the door opens, you walk through it with confidence instead of fear, with wisdom instead of impulse, with gratitude instead of pride. You won't have to force it, defend it, or prove it. What God times, God sustains. One day you will look back and see how perfectly the pieces fit. How the closed doors saved you, how the detours shaped you, how the waiting positioned you. And you will thank God not just for the blessing, but for the delay that prepared you to receive it. So don't rush the process. Don't curse the waiting. Don't assume silence means no. Delay is not denial. It is God saying, trust me, I'm not finished yet. There is a moment in every journey when holding on becomes heavier than letting go. When your grip is tight, your shoulders ache, your mind is restless, and your spirit is worn thin. Not because you lack faith, but because you've been carrying something God never asked you to carry alone. That is the moment surrender begins to whisper. And surrender is not weakness. Surrender is wisdom. We misunderstand surrender because we confuse it with defeat. We think letting go means giving up, admitting failure, or walking away from responsibility. But in the kingdom of God, surrender is not resignation. It is realignment. It is the decision to stop fighting God with your effort and start trusting Him with your outcome. Surrender unlocks supernatural strength because it removes the greatest barrier to God's power, self-reliance. As long as you believe you can manage it, control it, or fix it, you will try. And God, in His patience, will let you try. Not to watch you fail, but to let you discover the limits of your own strength. When you finally say, God, I can't do this anymore, heaven does not sigh in disappointment. It responds in power. There is a strength that comes from effort, and there is a strength that comes from surrender. Effort drains you. Surrender sustains you. Effort depends on how much you have left. Surrender depends on who God is, and He never runs out. Surrender does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. It means you release the timeline, the method, the pressure to perform, and the need to prove yourself. It means you say, God, I trust you more than I trust my understanding. And that trust opens a channel for divine strength to flow. Supernatural strength often shows up quietly. It doesn't always feel like a surge of energy or a dramatic breakthrough. Sometimes it feels like peace in the middle of uncertainty. Sometimes it feels like clarity where confusion used to live. Sometimes it feels like the ability to keep going when you thought you were done. That is strength from heaven. We resist surrender because we fear what will happen if we let go. We worry that things will fall apart, that opportunities will disappear, that nothing will get done. But what if the opposite is true? What if things fall into place? What if God handles what you couldn't? What if surrender doesn't stop progress? What if it accelerates it? Surrender invites God into the details you've been managing alone. It hands Him the weight of decisions, outcomes, and consequences. It says, God, I will obey, but you will provide. I will walk, but you will lead. And when God leads, you don't have to force doors. They open. You don't have to defend yourself. He does. You don't have to exhaust yourself. He renews you. There is a reason God often asks for surrender before He releases strength. Strength without surrender breeds pride. Power without dependence leads to burnout. God is not just interested in helping you win. He is committed to keeping you whole. Surrender protects your soul while strength moves your situation. Surrender also teaches you rest, not physical rest alone, but soul rest, the kind of rest that quiets anxiety and silences the inner pressure to have everything figured out. When you surrender, you stop rehearsing worst case scenarios. You stop trying to control tomorrow. You learn to live present, anchored in trust instead of fear. Supernatural strength flows best through yielded hearts. Hearts that say, God, have your way. Not my plan, not my pace, not my preference, but yours. That posture gives God permission to work beyond your limits, to do what logic can't explain, to bring resources you didn't expect, to open doors you didn't knock on. Surrender also reshapes your prayers. You stop telling God what must happen and start asking Him what He wants to do. You stop demanding outcomes and start requesting alignment. And that shift changes everything, because God responds to surrendered prayers with sustained strength. Many people are tired not because the journey is hard, but because they are resisting surrender. They are pushing where God is asking them to pause. They are holding where God is asking them to release. They are striving where God is asking them to trust. And the soul knows the difference. It signals exhaustion as a warning, not to quit, but to yield. When you surrender, you discover that God is a better manager of your life than you ever were. He knows when to push and when to protect, when to open and when to delay, when to remove and when to restore. And His strength flows into every area you place in His hands. Surrender doesn't remove responsibility. It redefines it. Your responsibility becomes obedience, not outcomes. Faithfulness, not results. Trust, not control. And that lighter load allows divine strength to carry you further than effort ever could. You were never meant to live powered only by your own strength. You were designed to draw from heaven. Surrender is the connection point. It plugs your weakness into God's power. And when that connection is made, you discover a strength that doesn't fade with circumstances. So let go, not of hope, but of control, not of faith, but of fear. Lay it down, place it in God's hands, and watch how surrender unlocks a strength you didn't know you had, because it was never yours to begin with. There are battles you face that drain you before they defeat you. Battles that don't just attack your circumstances, but your spirit. You wake up tired, not because of what you did yesterday, but because of what you're carrying today. You've been strong for too long, fighting wars that have worn down your joy, your peace, and your hope. And God is saying something powerful in this season. There are fights you are too tired to fight, and you were never meant to fight them alone. We often assume that if a battle shows up, it must be ours to handle. So we brace ourselves, tense our shoulders, sharpen our words, and prepare for another round. But not every battle is assigned to you. Some battles are invitations for God to step in and demonstrate his authority. When you are exhausted, that exhaustion is not always a sign of weakness. It is often a sign that you've been trying to fight in your own strength what only God can win in his. God never intended for you to war from a place of depletion. He fights from a position of rest, power, and certainty. When you reach the point where you are too tired to keep swinging, heaven is not alarmed. Heaven is activated, because God does not need your energy to defeat your enemy. He needs your trust. There is a reason God tells his people to be still. Stillness is not passivity. It is posture. It is the posture of confidence that says, I know who is fighting for me. When you rest, you are not surrendering the battle to the enemy. You are surrendering it to God. And God has never lost a battle. Resting in God does not mean you stop showing up. It means you stop striving. You obey, but you don't obsess. You move, but you don't manipulate. You speak, but you don't strive to defend yourself. You let God handle the weight while you stay aligned with his direction. Many people are tired because they are fighting battles in the wrong way. They are arguing instead of praying, controlling instead of trusting, reacting instead of resting. And every wrong method drains more strength than the battle itself. God is calling you back to divine strategy, not human struggle. God fights battles you're too tired to fight by shifting the battlefield. What you thought was a fight against people is often a fight against fear, doubt, or discouragement. And those enemies are not defeated by force, they are defeated by faith. When you rest in God, he works on levels you cannot reach. He changes hearts. He rearranges circumstances. He exposes what was hidden. He closes doors that were draining you and opens doors that protect you. Resting in God is an act of warfare. It tells the enemy, I refuse to panic. It tells fear, you don't control me. It tells anxiety, God is in charge. That kind of rest confuses the enemy because it contradicts the chaos he tries to create. God does not always fight by removing the battle immediately. Sometimes he fights by strengthening you to stand without collapsing. Sometimes he fights by giving you peace while the storm still rages. Sometimes he fights by wearing the enemy down while you are learning to trust him more deeply. But make no mistake, he is fighting. When you are exhausted, God does not shame you. He invites you. He says, come to me. Not when you've recovered, not when you've figured it out, but right now, tired and worn, because rest is not a reward for finishing the battle. It is a requirement for surviving it. God fights for you by handling what you cannot see. He protects you from traps you never noticed. He blocks attacks that never reach you. He silences accusations before they land. And while you rest, he is active. While you sleep, he watches. While you breathe, he battles. There is a freedom that comes when you realize you don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. You don't have to defend your character. You don't have to win every argument. God can fight those battles better than you ever could. And often your silence allows his strength to speak. Rest requires trust. Trust that God sees what you see. Trust that God knows what you don't. Trust that God will act at the right time in the right way. And that trust restores strength faster than effort ever could. Anxiety drains you. Trust renews you. When God fights your battles, the outcome carries his signature. Doors open without explanation. Conflicts resolve without confrontation. Favor shows up where resistance used to be. And you realize that the battle was never about overpowering. It was about positioning, getting you to the place where God could fight freely on your behalf. You are not weak because you are tired. You are human, and God knows exactly how much you can carry. When the load becomes too heavy, he doesn't demand more. He offers himself. He steps in with power when you step back in faith. So rest. Not because the battle is easy, but because God is strong. Lay it down. Stop replaying it. Stop rehearsing the worst outcomes. Place it in God's hands and trust his timing, his wisdom, and his power. God fights battles you're too tired to fight. And when he does, you don't just win, you are restored. There are moments when life breaks you in ways you never expected. Not just setbacks, but soul-level fractures. The kind that leave you staring at the ceiling at night, wondering how you became this tired, this unsure, this different. You didn't just lose something, you lost parts of yourself along the way. And in those moments, it feels like weakness has finally won. But what if what broke you didn't destroy you? What if it introduced you to God's power in a way comfort never could? Breaking has a purpose we don't like to talk about. It strips away illusions. It exposes where you've been pretending, pushing, performing. It removes the false strength you used to survive on. And while that feels terrifying, it is also sacred, because God does not pour new power into old containers that refuse to change. He allows breaking so transformation can begin. We associate brokenness with failure. God associates it with access. When you were strong, you relied on yourself. When you were confident, you trusted your plan.